Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Cooper. I am the talk show host for GBA, and I'm also the talk show host for Crypto Mom 2. And I want to welcome everyone to this episode. I actually have a very special guest on today, Ralph Benko. His background is so diverse. He's been in the blockchain world for many years, and he's a thought leader and an expert in so many different areas. We're going to be having more than one conversation. But one of the areas that I thought was really important that we chat about is what's going on legislation-wise and just the guidance that both the states and the federal side might need to be thinking about. Ralph, I want to thank you for being on. I want you to kind of share a little bit about your background and what we're going to be talking about today. And then I will share screen on the website that we're going to be also featuring and highlighting as well.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate your having me on. I have a very eclectic background. I've spent almost 40 years in the you civilians like to call it the swamp, but I prefer to think of it as wetlands. And by the way, just in case you didn't know, George Washington, before he became president, almost went bankrupt with a company called the Great Dismal Swamp Company. So I prefer to think of Washington as a wetlands because you can't drain a swamp. It almost caused George Washington to go broke. You could look this up at Mount Vernon. I'm not making it up. Okay. But a wetlands is actually a kind of ecosystem. And if you inject fresh water so that it's not stagnant, instead of letting all the sugar growers soak up all that nice sweet water, we can a wetlands can be a gorgeous, extensive ecosystem like the Everglades. And the only thing I would suggest to you, Jackie, is watch out for the alligators.
So that kind of goes right back into what we're going to be talking about today. So I am going to be sharing screen. We have up on the screen for those that are on the YouTube side, it's called the American Blockchain PAC. For those that are on the talk show side, I'll definitely have the links available so that way you can go and explore. The American Blockchain Political Action Committee, what I'm seeing on the screen is that it's supports crypto-friendly members of Congress, and it talks about how to educate lawmakers so that way policies can support cryptocurrency in the blockchain. How did it get started and what's your involvement with it? I know that you're involved with a lot of great organizations.
Well, Todd White is the founder of the American Blockchain PAC, and Adele Nazarian is the CEO of it. I'm the senior counselor to it. The chairman of its advisory board is Dr. W. Scott Stornetta, who with Stuart Haber invented the blockchain in 1991. And so it has a very distinguished provenance. I was talking with Dr. Stornetta one day, and one of the things I noted in our conversation, which was just informal, we were having breakfast or lunch or talking on the phone. We don't talk all that frequently. He's a very, very busy guy. It's always a pleasure to chat with him. And I said, it's amazing to me how the House Financial Services Committee, the tone of the House Financial Services Committee at its most recent hearing has turned far less adversarial to the blockchain and far more interested. Now, there were still some adversaries there. There's still some hostility among, but they're far fewer and far less intense and protracted. And Scott said, oh yeah, well, that was Todd White. You know, he's a lobbyist. He's not a lobbyist for the blockchain, but he is a lobbyist, and he has very good relations with the Congressional Black Caucus, being himself Black and having been recruited into the political game by no less than Rosa Parks, of all people, the icon in anti-discrimination. And Scott just told me offhand, he wasn't trying to persuade me of anything. He's a very laid back personality, very sweet, empathetic gentleman. Said, well, that was Todd's work. Todd working behind the scene was a big part of why the House Financial Services Committee chaired by Maxine Waters has changed its tone. And I was really impressed by that. So I looked up Todd and probably saw him at a GBA conference. And I said, Todd, congratulations, that's quite an achievement and quite an unsung achievement. And I would be very interested in helping the American Blockchain Political Action Committee, helping to advance the mission of creating a healthier legislative and regulatory environment that would achieve the goal of protecting the public, which I'm all for. I'm not a original gangster hodler who sees the ecosystem like the Mos Eisley Cantina from Star Wars, where everybody's shooting each other up and so forth. So I'm not hostile to law or regulation, but I'm eager to see it be done in ways that are constructive, both to protect the public without impairing innovation and without driving this very important emerging technology offshore, so that the United States loses its technological edge. And he, after talking with Scott, deciding if I was crazy, as Niels Bohr said to Wolfgang Pauli once, we all agree that your theory is crazy. What divides us is whether it's crazy enough to be true. Friday was Niels Bohr's birthday. Should be as one of the prime thinkers of quantum physics, and we all deserve to celebrate bigly on that day. So after the two of Scott and Todd deciding that I'm crazy, but am I crazy enough for my theory to be true or not, they invited me to come in as senior counselor to the PAC, and I've been supporting the organization since then in ways that I hope are beneficial, and also working in tandem with the American Blockchain Initiative, of which Alex Allaire, a very, very impressive young man and advocate in the field. The two American blockchain entities seem to have a lot in common, so I've attempted to bring them together informally. And one of the things that we're doing together is curating what we consider to be the 10 best policy proposals in terms of legislation and regulation for the 118th Congress, which will convene on January 3rd. So Adele and Alex have written a masterpiece of a column for national interest, laying out these 10 ideas, which we've frankly curated. We have all of us, we keep our ear to the ground. We are listening for good ideas that won't hurt the public and will support innovation. So we've accumulated them, and now Todd and I are writing a little book in which we take each of these 10 ideas and dig into what exactly it entails and why exactly it would be of value to America and the world.
And I love that idea, and that's why I wanted us to hop on and actually chat about this. So the first, I know, going down the 10 list, you suggest that Congress should provide funding for blockchain research and development on the scale of the National Quantum Initiative. You want to explain a little bit more about what that means and what your vision is for that?
Sure. What we thought of the National Quantum Initiative has had $1.5 billion appropriated to it over 5 years. And when we originally wrote this, we thought that was a really big deal, and that we were encouraging the Congress to appropriate $1 billion for R&D into the blockchain. You have to understand that the private sector, corporate America, enterprise sector, can't do open-ended research and development. They have to have a good shot at showing a profit from whatever it is that they research or develop. To create basic research, which can then turn into things like the internet and the World Wide Web, you need to be a nation state, because you need to be able to make breakthroughs that are going to be huge, but you don't know whether they're going to occur or what they're going to be good for when you find them. So this absolutely flunks the libertarian purity test. Okay, and to which I plead guilty, guilty, guilty. Okay, but that said, it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, now the happiest news was that, and we had, I can almost guarantee we had nothing to do with this. Shortly after we wrote and published this, Congress passed the CHIPS and Science Act, which offered not $1.5 billion, but $200 billion for the semiconductor industry, 50 billion and 150 billion to be done for scientific research. So we were a little ahead of our time, and we were not nearly as bold as what Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden managed to pull off. But a couple of things here. And the first thing is the 200 billion for the CHIPS and Science Act, only 50 billion of that was appropriated. The other 150 billion was authorized, meaning it's not actually real money, not even fiat currency. Okay? It's a commitment to appropriate money into in the future. So there's plenty of room there for us to be putting friendly pressure on the Congress to make good on the full $200 billion rather than the $50 billion down payment. The second thing is that we are now encouraging the Congress, when it appropriates money beyond the chips into the science, that it makes sure that the blockchain sector be a recipient for some of that, for a substantial amount of research and development. We're not asking for the whole 150 billion. We're not even asking for half of it. But if between $1.5 billion and $15 billion were to be injected into the blockchain sector at the federal R&D level, some of which, by the way, can be contracted out through CRADA's cooperative research and development agreements, between whether it's the national labs or whether it's NASA or whether it's NIST or whether it's NSA, National Science, NSF, National Science Foundation. There are plenty of hotbeds of scientific excellence embedded in the federal government. If they want to do a cooperative research and development agreement with Oracle or IBM or Rockwell International, we're okay with that. And we just think that since China, our chief technological and economic rival, has promised to occupy the commanding heights of the blockchain, okay, and since President Xi, the premier of the People's Republic of China, is an engineer, okay, and since China has been churning out engineers by the millions, okay, we think that having the federal government investing generously in the blockchain sector is a fabulous opportunity, and will bring with it a wonderful return on investment, or ROI. So that was our first recommendation.
I would definitely agree with you, especially with the growth that's going to be happening within the blockchain, both for information sharing and privacy. I think that we do need to look at investing in this. I know your second recommendation was related to designating funding for staffing within the White House of the Science and
Yes, and once again, we were just one step ahead of our time, because the most recent, I think it was Defense Appropriations Act, but one of the most recent pieces of legislation has funded a dedicated position in the OSTP, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, for blockchain. So, it's like, it's great. They're doing these things, right? All we have to do is mention them and they get done somehow.
It's in the ether, and they pick up on it. Yeah, that's right.
It's in the ether, particularly after the merge. So, but we don't like to rest on our laurels, and so we have opened it up now with a new article in the National Interest, or recently published and to be compiled into a book, suggesting that it would make a lot of sense. It'd be very worthwhile for Congress to fund a full-time position in the National Economic Council and in the National Security Council, because blockchain has profound implications for the economy and for national security, as well as for science. And it's just terribly important to have highly qualified experts at the highest level at the White House in all three areas: science, economics, and national security, advising the head of their office, who are in turn advising the president. So when you have something that looks to me like it could, there's been a lot of frustration because the Gartner hype cycle, everybody's really excited about the blockchain, but all we have is a bunch of rather paltry use cases to show for it. I believe for another show that we've discovered the golden needle in the blockchain haystack, which is to say Roland-based, RChain, concurrency-based computes, which will allow the blockchain to break free of its fetters and scale.
Yep,
So,
we're definitely going to be doing a follow-up on that, so everyone stay tuned for that. So
this is the golden needle in the blockchain haystack. Some people are going to have a mini retreat in store for them, so do stay tuned.
yep.
So anyway, so there we go. So we are now pushing, and I've spoken with the correct legislative assistant, the guy who got the OSTP system in there. I came across him at a GBA event. And I said, well, let's not stop there. Let's get dedicated blockchain professionals into the National Security Council and the National Economic Council too. And I could see the wheels turning in his head. So that's what we do at the American Blockchain PAC. We try to come up with good ideas and try to put them into the right brains.
No, I agree with you. It's all about education and information. So the third thing that you talked about is the establishment of federal.
No, it's not all about education and information, Jackie. It's about education, information, but most important of all, inspiration.
Yes.
Sorry to kibitz.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I appreciate this.
Okay. Next,
the third thing.
Third thing.
The third on the list is about the establishment of the federal preemption of state regulation of money transmissions. Please explain more on that.
Okay, Congressman Fred Thompson, not Fred, Congressman Glenn Thompson. Glenn Thompson, two N's in Glenn.
Yes.
Okay, is the ranking member of the House Agriculture Committee. Okay, the House Agriculture Committee is the committee of jurisdiction that over the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, because agricultural products are commodities, wheat, soybeans, and so forth. Okay, but they have a broader jurisdiction than that, and it extends to virtual commodities like the blockchain. And so therefore, he put out a blueprint late last year, or maybe early this year. And among many really good ideas in that blueprint was to give enterprises that are working in the sector the right to register and have their money transmitter license issued by the CFTC, and make that preemptive of the need to file in the 47 states that require money transmitter licenses, which, by the way, costs over $1 million, takes over 2 years, okay, and is incredibly duplicative. And then you've got your ongoing compliance costs. So this is suffocating to startups. A startup may start off with working capital of maybe $150,000 to $300,000 at their friends and family round or their angel investor round. Okay, if their regulatory compliance costs are prohibitive, then you've shut down innovation instead of simply saying, okay, good, let's find an inexpensive way to do this that will completely protect the public, and then we'll have more firms innovating and competing. So we thought that now, if the Republicans take the majority next month, then Representative Thompson will be the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, and he will be in a good position to move this forward. But there's a lot of things here, a lot of things in our recommendations that are very inherently bipartisan. So what we're doing is we're forming a little cheering section. And there's the other lesson here is that we didn't make these ideas up. We stole them fair and square. We wandered around reading the sector media, reading the business media, reading general media, talking to people on Capitol Hill and the Congressional Blockchain Caucus and so forth. And what we did was we simply wrote down what we consider to be the very best ideas we encountered. We have no pride of authorship, and all of your millions of viewers should feel perfectly free to steal any or all of these ideas from us fair and square and run with them.
For sure, we need communication to be shared out. Your fourth on this checklist talks about the government would benefit from creating a proof of stake blockchain platform to distribute federal disaster relief funds. Now, there's so much packed in here.
Yeah.
For people that might not understand what proof of stake is, and the idea that you could actually distribute federal disaster relief funds through a blockchain platform. So how do you want to kind of unfold this?
Yeah, first of all, let's get the proof of stake thing over fast. Okay. And that is, there are two major consensus algorithms in practice. There's actually dozens more in theory. One is called proof of work, and one is called proof of stake.
Right.
Bitcoin is proof of work, and Ethereum was proof of work until it transitioned over to proof of stake during the merge.
Yep.
The reason that I made a point of this is that the proof of work Ethereum network was, the gas fees were sometimes astronomical, where you would have to spend $100 in gas fees to move $2 worth of Ethereum. Exactly. Okay. Whereas in proof of stake, it's virtually free. It's 1/10 or 1/100th of the cost of that. So I specify, and also in terms of the ecology, the proof of stake is far less energy intensive and therefore far less productive of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases than proof of work. Okay, I'm not as worried about that as some people are, but some people are, and I believe we could use remediation with carbon capture or planting billions of trees or lots of other ways to do it, but I don't want to have that argument. People who are concerned about the climate impact need to be respected, whether I'm in complete accord with them or not. So by specifying that the government should be using a proof of stake stake-based chain, which I believe Solana and Cardano, there are other Polygon, there are other proof of stake chains out there. This is not hypothetical, it's not theoretical. Then we can put aside the what economists call negative externalities of the costs and the environmental impact, and just focus on what this is good for. And you can tokenize money and basically say, this, here you get a token, Ralph, but it can only be used for this legitimate purpose. And by the way, it's auditable. So right now, the Washington Post has been reporting on billions and maybe multiple billions of dollars of fraud in the federal COVID relief packages. Okay. In addition, I've been told by people in the know that between 15 and 30% of federal disaster relief, whether domestic or foreign aid, it disappears, and nobody knows what happens to it, and it's presumed to be lost and didn't end up in the hands of the people that we're trying to relieve. So it is a multi-billion-dollar cost to the taxpayers without advancing the purpose. The blockchain is made for this kind of stuff. You put the funds on the blockchain in a smart contract specifying that it can't be used to buy Porsches, which is one of the things the Justice Department discovered, or can't be used to fund a non-existent company, another thing that the Justice Department is claiming is going on, or to pay non-existent employees, another transaction the Justice Department is alleging. It can only be used for the real stuff for which Congress intended it. Thereby, we either save the taxpayers money because it requires less to get it into the hands of the people we're trying to help, or we help more people. And so I'm actually, Todd and I are just writing another column for CoinDesk talking about about why the federal government is being so slow to adopt this new financial infrastructure. I mean, the problem with emergency funding is it's an emergency. And our old-fashioned system of banks and wire transfers and checks and stuff like that cannot move the money fast enough into the hands of the people who desperately need it. The blockchain can. An enterprise blockchain platform can do that with asymptotically approaching zero fraud or waste. How great is that? And by the way, the savings to the billions of dollars of savings to the taxpayer will more than underwrite all the R&D we want to do in blockchain so that we can move this forward into adoption rather than into theory.
I definitely see how that can work. And that could be a whole nother conversation because I know we're working down our list here, but I definitely see the reality of this. And I also see the applications of this. So I'm really glad that you talked about this. Your fifth area was encouraging financial rating agencies to engage in rigorous risk assessment of the blockchain sector. So why don't we talk about that? I'm definitely pro advocate for this for many reasons. Why don't you go ahead and share what you're thinking about here?
This is common practice in terms of bonds, for instance. So there are three major rating agencies for bonds, which is Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. Okay, and they send in auditors to look at the underlying assets and the underlying enterprises to these bonds, and then they rate the bonds as AAA or junk bonds or somewhere in between. Okay, this is great. The government doesn't have to do it. Okay, you amortize the cost of doing the risk assessment over millions of transactions, so the cost for each individual one is amortized and therefore not preclusive to getting the job done. And by the way, this is market-based rather than civil service-based. Our agencies like the SEC and CFTC and stuff like that are greatly understaffed, okay, and can't begin to keep up with a market the size of, we've got the best markets in the world, and we have very high integrity, smart regulators, but I'm not knocking them. What I'm talking about is they still get to do their jobs, but if you have high integrity, high rigor rating agencies, then people who want to buy in will know what level of risk that they're taking, and they can decide how much risk they're game for. Bigger risk, bigger return, but also a bigger chance you're going to lose everything. Okay, it's the nature of the free markets that if people want to take those risks in pursuit of those rewards, fully knowing the level of risk that they're taking, that they should be able to do that. It's good for the overall health of the economy. Okay, that would free up the regulators and the enforcement agencies to focus in on the real bad guys, which is, where they really want to be spending their time. They're interested in, they're motivated to prevent serious fraud that is hurting mom and dad, the moms and pops. They're not interested in handing out a bunch of traffic tickets. They're not equipped to do that. It's not worthy of their talents, and it's inconsistent with the amount of resources that we're going to give them. So by encouraging the creation of ratings agencies, I believe that the markets can be better protected. The consumers can be better protected at far lower compliance costs to the industry.
The only thing that, before we get on to the number 6 one, the only thing that I would say, and being an attorney educator as well as, a participant in this, I would ask that the legislation not have accredited investors be tagged in that for everything. I really think that the area of cryptocurrency, NFTs, I think people need the freedom, no matter what their economic level, to be able to participate. And if we say that, I do agree that there need to be ratings for high level of risk versus lower level of risk, but I think that people need to be able to make choices. And if we only allow individuals who have a certain economic level, then others can't participate. And that's my only concern about the rating scales type of thing.
Well, we didn't address that, and you make an interesting point, a point worth discussing. And we're open to this conversation going on. We're very open to people like you entering this conversation. Who is your congressperson?
Oh, we're not going to go there, but we'll continue on the conversation. Let's go on
Okay,
to number
okay, well,
6.
let me open it up to your
Yeah.
listeners. If you don't know who your congressperson is, go to the web, find the website where you can type in your zip code and find out, and then let them hear from you. And if you have an idea, okay, be civil about it, be succinct about it, but communicate it. I'm hoping that, Jackie, you'll make it easy for all of your listeners to go to the national interest and find this list of 10.
All these links will be on the blog below. So that way, as people are educating themselves for both this 10 list and also all the things that we're talking about. Yes, for sure.
But we want people not to just read this and go, I agree, or I disagree. We want them to communicate this to their member of Congress, senators, or I don't care that so much about them. God and the founders invented the Senate to stop legislating, and they're really good at it. The go juice comes out of the House, and if there's enough momentum in the House, usually if it's not too terrible an idea, even the Senate can be coaxed into going along. But I want people who, like you, to be contacting their elected representatives and say, here's what I think you should do, here's why. And write them a letter, call them up, talk to their staff. Staff is very important on this. And if they're hearing from the folks back home, that has a huge impact. So folks back home, you think about it, whether you're for these or against these, let your member of Congress know what you want them to do about it. Don't leave them out there orphaned in the big, scary, dark woods of the legislative process.
I agree. Definitely communicate with those that are within, your state, so that they will know how you feel. Number 6 is you recommend chartering a self-regulatory organization, SRO, for the blockchain sector. Explain more about that. I think that's fascinating.
Well, for instance, as I learned from my co-author of Dawn Talbot, we wrote a book called Redefining the Future of the Economy, Governance Blocks and Economic Architecture. Dawn had a long, successful career in Wall Street. And she says a lot, everybody thinks Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, greed is good. Okay. That ain't how it really is. That's just the movies. Okay. They are fiduciaries, meaning they have the highest level of duty to protect the investors who have entrusted them with the funds. And so people who think that Wall Street is just a big casino don't understand either the law or the practice of Wall Street. Yeah, there are bad guys that, that hopefully some of them, hopefully most of them eventually get caught and get sent away to prison, like, what was his name? The big famous Ponzi scheme guy. But, and yes, that's what makes the news, not the thousands of people who are staying awake nights trying to assess the risk and whether this is something that they can justify putting their clients' money into. Okay, this gets formalized in something called an SRO, or self-regulatory organization, like the New York Stock Exchange, that has a lot of rules to make sure that the little guy is not prejudiced by the big guys. So for instance, you can't do a trade through, you can't give the better price to a guy with a bigger order than the little order. They have to be processed in the order that they came in with. And there are rules governing this. The industry themselves know what's fair and know what those rules should be. And they are up there. They're not perfect, but they are probably the best, both for reputational and for legal reasons, the best entities designed to come up with a self-regulatory organization to make sure that the little guy doesn't get hurt, and to add a couple of pennies to every transaction so that they have a staff, they can monitor this, and they can enforce their own rules. That's SROs for you.
I think it's important, especially as the blockchain becomes more expansive, that I think we do need an SRO. So that goes on to the 7th one, actually. The blockchain industry would benefit from tax deferrals on crypto-to-crypto transactions until they're realized. So explain to me more about that.
In real estate, if you sell your if you sell your apartment building, and within a certain amount of time, I think it might be 6 months, you take that money and you buy an office building, you don't have to pay taxes on the proceeds of sale because it's called a 1031 like-kind exchange. You're taking one asset, you're cashing it out, you're taking the cash, you're putting into a like-kind asset, another kind of real estate, okay? Which makes all the sense in the world, because the whole concept of income tax is that this is money that you have realized, and you're either going to spend it or put it in the bank at that as dollars, or put it into another whole new kind of investment like stocks, okay? And it doesn't make any sense to roll over a cryptocurrency investment into another cryptocurrency investment, and then the person who wanted to move out of Bitcoin and into Ethereum has to pay about 28% of their profits just in order to move it from one kind of cryptocurrency to another. This doesn't make economic sense, and so we recommend that we create a 1031 like-kind exchange type transaction for crypto to crypto exchanges, and then once you sell it and buy that 100-foot yacht or that mansion or start having wild parties with your proceeds, then you got to pay taxes on it once you start to consume it. But just rolling it over from one cryptocurrency investment to another, and by the way, this is probably costing America money, okay? Because people, instead of diversifying into what the investors consider to be a better investment, they're stuck in what they've got, so they don't have to pay the taxes and take the big hit. This is not good. This is not good business. And if we want to keep America at the forefront of technology innovation and at the forefront of economic prosperity, then having stupid propositions like no 1031 like-kind exchange crypto to crypto is just bad policy, and the Congress has the power to fix that.
Yeah, I definitely support this idea, especially when if you're involved with, doing any sort of cryptocurrency exchange, you also know that there's always fees for moving from one crypto to another crypto. And like you said, depending upon what blockchain you're on, the fees might be high. And, again, so it's not just paying taxes and moving things around. There can be gains, but there can be a lot of losses too. So, in the long run, if you're trying to think of an quote unquote investment strategy, then, and if you're trying to ride it out when there's a low market or, move it around, at a different time, it would help if the IRS had something that supported this creativity of why we're involved with this. And that actually goes right into your 8th one, where it talks about no taxation of staking until the gains are realized by a sale. So would you like to explain that?
Yes, in proof of stake, where the IRS is now taken with a little bit of ambiguity, taking the position that when you have new tokens issued in a proof of stake, as a node in a proof of stake network, you immediately owe taxes on those. And this is equivalent to the IRS coming into a farm and saying, hey, planted all that wheat has now come up, you have a full crop of wheat, you haven't harvested it and you haven't sold it yet, but we're going to tax you on the wheat standing in the field. Okay, that is onerous, that is economically counterproductive, and the Congress should straighten that out and simply say that, particularly because proof of stake is so much more environmentally beneficial and so lower cost than proof of work, that attempting to tax it before realization, just upon the creation of this additional value, not the realization of this additional value, is really bad. And we're recommending it's bad for the economy, it's bad for innovation, and it's probably even bad on the Laffer curve kind of way of driving people out of proof of stake chains, which we don't want to do. We want innovation. So let's do it. And when they finally make a buck, then we tax that buck. But we don't tax them on unrealized gains from staking.
I agree with you on that. The 9th one, it's close to my heart as well. It's about non-fungible tokens or NFTs. And you talk about, how they are not securities. And again, the definition of security when people kind of look at it, there's a whole conversation around that. But what's your focus on the NFT
Look,
side?
an NFT is just a title to a digital asset, and to be think of it as a title to an artwork. So if you buy Beeple's Everydays, right, $69 million, and then and then you turn around and sell it, it's just like selling a work of art, a Basquiat or something like that. To try to blur the distinctions and give the SEC jurisdiction over your selling your NFTs would be a lot like giving jurisdiction over Sotheby's and Christie's and the art market to the SEC. It's just it's a real stretch, and adds a huge amount of regulatory compliance costs and hassle, and it's just not what the Securities and Exchange Act was originally set out to do. And so I just want the Congress to clarify that NFTs are not securities, period. Okay, they are a form of individuated title that shows that you are the unique owner of this digital asset, whatever it happens to be. Now, if you want to break that up into 1,000 different units and then auction off the units, go ahead, treat that as a security. That's fractionalization of ownership, kind of like stocks. And so but that's not the NFT, that's the fractionalization.
Yeah, I think that you definitely have to look at the intent behind it. And NFTs, the use of NFTs, you can find it in art, you can find it in music, you can also find it in clothing. You can find it's information that can be uploaded to an NFT. I've uploaded my book as an NFT. So again, it doesn't mean that it's a security, but I agree, more clarification on definition needs to happen here.
They haven't been treating it as a security, but just honestly, I believe that Gary Gensler is a very aggressive regulator who is always looking for ways to push his jurisdiction to the limits. And so I just like that withdrawn before that becomes a wet blanket on the NFT market, which has enough headaches of its own without adding regulatory uncertainty to it.
And for those that might not have had experience going in creating an NFT or even purchasing an NFT, you still have to use cryptocurrency to obtain an NFT. So there's many different levels here that need to be defined, and I agree with you. It needs to be clarified, and that actually falls into the last one where you were suggesting that Congress enact a statute stipulating that utility tokens are not securities. So would you like to explain for those that might not understand what a utility token is?
Utility token is a token that does something rather than a cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I stole this idea from Greg Meredith, another one of your guests. Okay,
yeah.
And his point is that all the internet uses the equivalent of security tokens to prevent for cybersecurity purposes all over the place. Okay, they are a shield against abuse by bad guys. To be treating them as securities rather than, or to be potentially treating them as securities rather than treating them as part of the apparatus of the way the blockchain works is just fundamentally wrong. It would be devastating to the United States' ability to maintain a leadership position here. It would be crushing to the sector, and it would not protect anybody. This is something that only a genius like Meredith would be able to pick up on, but he picked up on it, and I'm just channeling his wisdom out there into the policy world because I want to see America stay number one while we protect the moms and the pops out there.
I agree with you. This list of 10, I think, is phenomenal. All the links will be within the blog below. Everyone, if you have questions, definitely reach out to Ralph or myself. We're here to.
No, don't reach out to me. Don't reach out to me. You're throwing me under the bus, Jackie. Reach out to Jackie. I'm already over.
All right, reach out to me. Reach out to me, and I will make sure that we get answers. But for sure, this is part of the conversation that we need to have. And I appreciate what you've been sharing here. Any last minute thoughts before we sign off on this episode? And I know we're going to have continuing conversations.
Thank you, Jackie. It's been you're a great interviewer. Thank you very much for putting up with all of my disorganization. I hope your viewers found these 10 ideas to be valuable. And by the way, there are bound to be more ideas out there.
Yes.
We're not saying that this is preclusive or definitive or comprehensive. These are just the first 10 that we were able to find.
For sure, for sure. And thank you so much for being on. Everyone, definitely like and subscribe and stay tuned for all the future episodes. I know that
and let us know tell Jackie your great ideas. And Jackie, you can shoot them, you can text them to me, or you can email
that's
them.
right. We can add it to the list and make it the next 20. So thank you so much, everyone, for being on. I look forward to hearing from all of you and have a great day. Thank you.